What a sad few weeks it has been for all the Sharpshooter mains. In case you were unaware, the most recent Korean class balance patch went live on Korean server with some questionable changes and reworks. That same patch will be coming to NAEU in March, and a lot of players have been very vocal in sharing their feedback and thoughts about the Sharpshooter, which was probably hit the hardest in both good and a bad way. Unfortunately, all the outrage from the Korean players didn't really have any effect, as the patch is already live and there is absolutely 0% chance for any adjustments. So we have to deal with it, adapt, and figure out the best new builds, rotations, and playstyles. Do not be sad and do not despair, as your resident Sharpshooter main Freshie is here to remove any fear, doubt, and uncertainty you might have and show you that the Sharpshooter is in a better place than it's ever been. Don't believe me? Well, I guess you're gonna have to watch the video then to find out. And also, while you're at it, why not subscribe? It's free. We have to start at the source of this evil, the Korean patch notes. I'm not going to go over everything, so if you're interested, link to the patch notes is in the description. Basically, they removed Electric Nova and added new skill Hawkshot, changed certain tripods on the skills we use to deal more damage when the Hawk is summoned, and some tripods on the skill we didn't use to deal more damage when the Hawk is not summoned. You can probably already see where they're going with this, but the biggest change of all is their poor attempt at separating double class engraving build, which they did, but in a way that nobody asked for, nobody expected, and it also affected the Deathstrike build. They simply changed how the identity meter is generated. Instead of it being instant like it currently is, it was changed to generating meter over 10 seconds, which completely kills a double class engraving build, as the build requires instant meter generation. So why is this bad? It is not necessarily bad, but they clearly have intention of separating double class engraving builds from every class, which was also demonstrated in the past. Experienced Sharpshooter players know that these changes to meter generation are not nerfs, and the overall damage for both builds has been significantly increased to the current ones we have. They know that any damage increase for already weak class is a step in a good direction, so they have been outraged and vocal about completely different issues that Sharpshooter has. These are high mana consumption on every skill that hasn't been adjusted or lowered down for years, lack of super armors on skill, and almost non-existent synergy. Mana being the biggest issue forces players to either sacrifice damage by using Nightmare set or go for highest damage with Salvation Hallucination sets while being forced to use 2 to 3 focus runes and eating 80 gold mana food. Also, adding on a very old and bad visual and audio effects that skills have, which I'm not even gonna go into detail, are the main reasons of the outrage. Smilegate must really hate the class, or the Sharpshooter player base is so small and decreasing that they just simply don't care anymore. I am a Sharpshooter main, what do I do now? What do I build? Please help me. Okay, relax and breathe, I got you covered. Unfortunately, I don't have access to Korean client, so I wasn't able to test anything and got any concrete numbers. The overall verdict from Korean players is this: LoL Companion is very good, very fluid, easy to play, and very fun, and it also scales with spec, which makes for a new full spec build very viable. While Deathstrike is a good old Deathstrike that does bigger burst damage, having a slightly different timings and rotation, but still being fairly decent. I'm not going to go into detail showing and explaining the builds, but if you're interested to start preparing already, you can use this website, loava.com, to check what the highest geared Korean Sharpshooters play. At the time of recording of this video, in the top 100 highest geared Korean Sharpshooters, there were 52 LoL Companion players and 48 Deathstrike players. Out of those 52 LoL Companion players, half of them are spec crit and half of them are swiftness crit, so there is everything for everyone. If you're a current Deathstrike player, you will only need to change one accessory. If you are Swiftness LoL Companion, you're pretty much good to go. And if you're a double class engraving, well, you are slightly screwed, as you will need to change a minimum of 4 accessories. But the good thing is that you have an option for a full spec LoL companion build, which is relatively cheap. But Freshie, what are you going to play? Well, I'm glad you asked. I have always been a fan of dealing big damage and seeing big crits, so the obvious choice for me here is Deathstrike. The main reason is building it for the future. Now hear me out on this one, and this is only my prediction and speculation, but seeing as they made LoL Companion scaled with spec, is it safe to assume that maybe in the future they try to do something with Deathstrike scaling with spec, turning it into a Giga Burst build that could potentially be on par with the current top burst spec classes? Maybe I'm just full of copium, but the reality is, Sharpshooter at absolute highest still cannot compete in terms of overall damage and DPS with most other classes, so is it really that big of a copium? I don't know, but what I do know is that I have mained Sharpshooter when it was the absolute worst DPS class ever made in any MMORPG, not just Lost Ark. If you're an OG Korean Russian Sharpshooter player, you will know the struggles we had, the kind of rotations we had to use, and which ridiculous skills were doing the most damage. And look at us now. We stuck with it through thick and thin, and we are slowly but surely getting rewarded, we just have to believe. I am very interested to know what build are you currently using, what build are you planning to swap to, and how bloody excited are you for Snipe finally showing one big damage number. Let me know in the comments, and I also wanna see 100 million plus Snipe crit screenshots and clips being posted everywhere. Sharpshooter doesn't suck anymore, but you know what does? Gaming burnout. If you ever had one but didn't know how to stop it, why don't you help yourself by clicking on the video on your screen and see if it works for you.